Fresh, easy telera buns at home. These are the key to great Mexican tortas. Hi everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. Today is bread baking day. Well, specifically it is telera baking day, which is the classic bun that is used to make Mexican tortas. And it's a very simple bread dough to make. The whole process is very simple. So I'm going to take you through the steps of that. And the first thing that we have to do is to melt some yeast or dissolve some yeast in warm water. So I'm going to get this water onto the right temperature, and temperature is important here. I ran this a little bit before to get it kind of warm to where I thought it was going to be. And the temperature that we want is a little bit warmer than body temperature. So if you have a thermometer, it's going to be 100 to 110 degrees. I am using this rapid rise instant yeast. You could use a packet of active dry yeast for this. And I'm going to put it into the water there, the warm, slightly warm water, and then add a couple of tablespoons of sugar to this. Now, at this point, almost all recipes used to say, leave it to sit for about 10 minutes or so in order to know, to give yourself the assurance that you have active yeast. It doesn't really seem like anybody's doing that anymore, because when you buy a packet, unless it's ages old in your cabinet, it's going to be an active product. So we can go to the second step here, which is immediately. But if you want to make sure that your yeast is actively, let that sit for 10 minutes or so, and it'll be foamy, and that will indicate that for you. Okay, so now let's go over to the flour part of it. I will tell you that if you are a person that likes to bake, I highly, highly recommend that you get an inexpensive digital scale. They don't cost much money, and the exactness of measuring flour will be completely different for you. So I'm going to turn this on. I've got my bowl there. Now I could measure out 3 cups of flour, but there can be so much variance in the weight of those cups depending on whether I'm going in here and kind of packing it in, or I've got it kind of going up over the top, or if my flour has just been poured out of a 5-pound bag and it's super light in here, that will change exactly how much flour I'm getting in each cup. So instead I'm doing 420 grams of flour. Okay, a couple of things. First, I am using all-purpose flour to make these teleras. A lot of people would see me baking bread and think that you have to use bread flour, but they actually come out quite different and denser. And what you're looking for is something that's kind of light, so AP flour is the right choice there. Second thing is that when I started measuring the weight of the flour, I set the bowl on the scale, but what you didn't see was that I hit the tare button, and then that re-zeros it, so that we're starting from 0 without the weight of the bowl there. Something that when you start working with the scale, man, you'll get used to doing that every time. And then I'm going to add fat. The little telera buns almost always have some fat in it. The ones that I like the best are the ones from the old style bakers, where they use a little bit of melted pork lard in it. You could use pork lard, you could use some oil in it, vegetable oil in it. And then I've got salt to go in here as well. A couple of teaspoons, of the salt. I'm doing these as rounded ones because I am using the diamond crystal, which has a greater volume. And then we will take our, I don't know if you can see this now, but already this yeast is starting to look very active and very foamy. So I'll put all of that in here. And then we're going to put it onto the mixer. This could all be done by hand if you want to, but I'm going to put it onto the mixer to do the kneading part of it. So if I was going to do this by hand, I'd spend about 10 minutes doing the classic kneading motion, but in this situation, it will probably be ready. That would mean like a smooth looking elastic ball in about 5 minutes. When it's ready, we'll meet back here and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, this has been kneading now for definitely a few minutes, over 5 minutes to get to looking like what is in the bowl right now. And this is a soft dough, but it's pulling away from the sides and the dough looks really, really smooth. So I'm gonna turn that off and you can see that it's what the bakers would call a very hydrated dough. So it's kind of sticky here. And then I'm gonna just put a little bit of flour here and turn this out so that I can show you what the dough looks like when it's in the right stage here. Okay, so flip that over so that it's not sticky. If you were doing all of this kneading by hand, you would be doing this kind of a motion where you're folding it down and then pressing out and away, folding over and pressing out and away, folding over. And you can see as you do this that the dough becomes much more resilient. And now what was sticky at the beginning isn't sticky at all because I'm moving it around like that. So smoothness like that is one of the things that we're looking for. Resiliency is another thing that we're looking for. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in this bowl here and then take our dough, drop it in, flip it over so that it's coated. And then we're going to put this into a warm place. I'll just take a towel like that to put over it. I'll hold this in a warm place until it's about double in size. It'll take about an hour or so for that to happen. I'll show you what that'll look like. Okay, take a look at what this is like here. When you give it a little press like that, the indentation should sort of slowly come out. If it pops right back out, you got to let this rest longer, let it rise longer. Now, sometimes I like to actually make this the day before I'm going to bake them and just put it in, cover it with plastic wrap usually, put it directly into a refrigerator and let it do its rise for overnight. You'll actually get more developed flavor if you do the long, slow rise, but you have to take it out of the refrigerator a couple of hours before you continue on with the recipe for it to warm back up. Okay, so now we've got our risen dough here, and I'm going to press it out. This is typically called like a punch down, so we're pressing all of the air bubbles out of this. And then I'm going to cut it into 6 even pieces. So it's easiest for me to do that by cutting it in half and then sort of making a little bit of a log here so that I can get the pieces pretty even. And then the next thing that we need to do is to form these into balls. And I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I didn't do a very good job with that, I can tell you that. This is another place that your scale can really come in handy because you'll see just how much each one of these guys weighs there. Okay, I think I'm in a pretty good spot there. Okay, next thing is that we're going to put down a little bit of flour here. And then what the bakers in Mexico do to get the balls is to cup their hand around them like this and then roll. So my fingers are all touching the work surface here, and I'm giving a little bit of pressure in my palm on the ball like that, and then it just pops up into a beautiful round shape. Now, what we've done is to activate gluten in these by doing that press and roll. So we've got to let them sit for 15 minutes or so just to relax a little bit before we form the teleras. Okay, lightly flour the board. I know a lot of you probably do this, and that's a lightly floured board, but that actually isn't lightly floured. There are clumps of flour in it if you do it that way. It's best to sort of toss the flour from the side, and that will spread the flour evenly over your surface there. Okay, next thing that we're going to do with these guys is to press them out to an oval that's about 5 by 3. I like to use my fingers and then gently pull, and we can get to that 5 by 3 shape. Now I'm putting these now onto a baking sheet that I have lined with parchment paper. You could use one of the silicone mats there. You really do have to have something to kind of protect it. So if you don't have a silicone mat or parchment paper, I would really recommend doing a light grease on there and maybe toss a little bit of flour on the top to make sure that nothing sticks. Okay, last one pressed into the oval. And now I'm going to show you what makes teleras something really special. Definitely a unique bun, and that is that there are 3 humps in a telera. This is just a wooden chopstick that I broke. We are going to press deeply into it here. It's really best if you lightly flour this so it doesn't stick, but it feels like you're going to press all the way through. Then you do another one of those, so they're about 1 inch apart here, but fully into it. The first time you do this, you'll think you're going to go straight through the dough, but you won't go through the dough unless you really put your whole body weight into it. But you need a very, very deep indentation here. When you watch the bakers in Mexico do this, they're really rough with the dough. So don't be too gentle and think that you're going to do something crazy here. I am going to cover these now with a towel and let them sit for about 30 minutes until they're puffy looking, about double in the size, and then right into the oven, which you should get going right now. 400 degrees, so turn it on, get it hot, and then I'll meet you back here when these are ready to go into the oven. Okay, take a look at these. They're nicely puffy. You still see the indentations in them. I'm going to slide these into the middle of my 400 degree oven and let them bake for about 18 to 20 minutes, something like that. And we'll look and see when they're crusty and they're beautifully golden. Okay, just look at these beauties. So brown, so crispy. Now you're ready to explore beautifully delicious Mexican tortas.